This is Ramona Lehman, owner, operator of the Munger Moss Motel for the past 50 years. And glad you're listening to the Route 66 podcast.
Route 66, Route 66, right along with the Route 66 podcast. For talks with people living and working along the Mother Road. The main street of America, from Chicago to LA, bore a heavy, heavy load. Route 66, Route 66. Sometimes historical paths aren't discovered until they're lost. Right along with the Route 66 podcast.
Hello and welcome aboard the Route 66 podcast for talks with people living and working along the Mother Road. I'm your host, Anthony Arno, and I'd like to thank you for joining us today here on our journey. A very special thanks to my Patreon business supporters, including the Midpoint Cafe, Gilligan's Route 66 Tours, and the Jack Rabbit Trading Post. They not only support the podcast, but also the Route 66 Scholarship Program as well. Hey, do you know anyone currently enrolled in college? I want to share with you a very important message about the Route 66 Scholarship Program. Through the generous support of our Patreon supporters, we have a $1,000 award for any student enrolled in a college program for the current 2021-2022 academic year. The award will go to one lucky college student who could demonstrate the spirit of Route 66 by promoting and preserving the Mother Road. Category submissions include artwork. Can they recreate an image somewhere along Route 66 using their favorite medium, whether it be watercolors or oil-based paint or anything in between? Photographs. Do they have that favorite Route 66 image of a sunset, a building, or a sign that they might have captured from one of their journeys down the Mother Road? Arts and crafts. Do they have a Route 66 landmark that they can convert into a craft using pottery, beadwork, woodworking, or knitting? Interviews. Do they have a family member who has a first-hand experience about Route 66 when it was an actual highway in use way before the interstate system? Performance. Can they write a play or feature a puppet show highlighting a story celebrating Route 66? Music. Are they musically talented? Have they ever tried to play that famous song about Route 66, or maybe even better, write their own song about the road? Videos. Have they taken a journey down 66? Do they have footage that they can put into a documentary using a simple program such as WeVideo or iMovie? Then there's using multimedia, whether it be PowerPoint, Prezi, Canva, or Google Slides. What's their college major? Is it business, art, computer design, marketing, history? Well, whatever their college major is, how creative can they get in constructing a multimedia presentation featuring the road in that area of their major? If they're a marketing major, look at the famous Burma Shave campaign or the work of Fred Harvey. Art majors. One of the many art museums along Route 66, whether it be in a big town or a small town, or maybe even the murals for one particular town. History. Just look at the role that 66 played during its heyday, whether it be housing German POWs in Oklahoma or the site where Patton trained his 16,000 men in the Mojave Desert. Believe me, this is an easy way for any college student to cover a sizable portion of tuition for their attendance during the current year. Imagine a college student working at the local fast food restaurant or department store, and they're earning minimum wage. Now, if that college kid works 20 hours per week, they'd have to work for well over 1 month to cover $1,000 in tuition, especially after taxes. And I want to remind you that this program isn't just for college students. We have a similar program for students in grades K through 12. If anyone has any questions, I invite you to reach out and email me with questions you might have. You can email me personally at route66podcast@gmail.com. The deadline is December 15th. Good luck. And for today's show, I have a Route 66 legend up there with the Angel Delgadillos of the road. Ramona Lehman, the current owner of the Munger Moss Motel in Missouri, who holds the current title for being the longest-running business owner on Route 66. She runs the motel today at the age of 83 years old. She's been doing it for the past 50 years. Ramona is going to tell us exactly how an Iowa farm girl wound up running one of the most historic motels along Route 66. Route 66 News. The U.S. recently opened up its borders to fully vaccinated international travelers, ending an almost 2-year travel ban that certainly has had an effect on allowing international travelers into the country to drive down the Mother Road. Locals in Amarillo, Texas have reached their goal of raising $18,000 to repaint the water tower in the historic district with a Route 66 shield. The Route 66 Village, west of Tulsa, Oklahoma, has opened up and showcases all modes of transportation inside a historic railroad depot, complete with a locomotive, derrick, gas station, and pump jacks. And volunteers, under the direction of Roman Rich, put a much-needed roof on the long-closed Shamrock Court Motel along Route 66 in Sullivan, Missouri. Rich has posted pictures of the progress at the Shamrock Court on his Facebook page, and I'll have a link to that page here in the show notes for today's show. Listener feedback. Here's a call from Steve from California along a segment that I spent a considerable amount of time on this past summer.
Hello, Anthony. This is Steve from California, and I live close to the old route as it makes its way through Upland and Rancho Cucamonga. My wife and I drove the whole of Route 66 back in 2009 and hope to do it again someday, as we feel there was so much we missed due to time constraints. It took much longer than we anticipated. I have enjoyed your podcast since the first episode, and I find it fascinating. Keep up the good work. As an aside, I must thank you for your interview regarding the La Posada Hotel in Winslow, Arizona. It is now our oasis, and we have gone back numerous times and look forward to going back again. Take care.
Thanks, Steve. Yes, La Posada in Winslow, Arizona. I actually stayed there with my family this past summer. And for anyone visiting La Posada, they have a really neat art museum in the back of the building in a newly refurbished railroad depot. Again, I'd like to thank my special group of Patreon supporters who are not only supporting the podcast, but the scholarship program as well. They include Jim Crabtree in California, Mike Fort, Route 66 author and photographer Shelley Graham, Kristen Hackinson from Washington State, Rich Havlick from Minnesota, Mary Nicholson from Pennsylvania, Wendy Rashke from Texas, Evan Stern from New York, and from the United Kingdom, Charlie Beaton, and from the Netherlands, Jim Renson. The business supporters for the podcast include the Midpoint Cafe in Adrian, Texas, the Jack Rabbit Trading Post in Joseph City, Arizona, and Gilligan's Route 66 Tours, providing travelers with guided tours of Route 66 in their own Ford convertible Mustang, accommodations at historic Route 66 motels, and breakfast every morning. For more information, please visit gilligansroute66.com. All Patreon members will receive an extended version of today's show featuring a talk with Ramona Lehman, owner of the Munger Moss Motel, which is an additional 10 minutes of content. Plus, all my Patreon members at the Will Rogers level and above will be receiving their 2022 Route 66 wall calendar this holiday season with some of the most desired pictures along the road, including Roy's in Amboy, the Cadillac Ranch, the Blue Whale, Chain of Rocks Bridge, and the Santa Monica Pier. Please check out my Patreon page to see all the different levels of support that are available to not only support the podcast, but the scholarship program as well, including maybe even me showing up in your driveway in an RV. Links can be found at Route66podcast.com. And now here's the trivia question for today's show. On the last episode, I featured the GAR Cemetery in Miami, Oklahoma, and the 15 British soldiers who were laid to rest there as a result of training accidents while those men were here in the States during the early days of World War II. Here's the question. John Resbeck never met his father, Kenneth, who was killed here back in 1944 while his wife was pregnant with their son John back home in England. At the age of 75, what historic event did John take during a visit to Miami, Oklahoma recently to celebrate his father's life? The answer after today's show. So in all the episodes I've released, I've been told that my listeners enjoy my talks with business owners who own and operate historic businesses along 66, especially these historic motels. I've had the honor of talking with Kevin and Nancy before they retired from the Blue Swallow, Connie from the Wagon Wheel, and even Shelley Graham, who wrote a book about the Coral Court Motel, which was demolished back in the 90s. But today, I have a true treat for my listeners. I have a true Route 66 pioneer. Originally a farm girl from Iowa, she just celebrated her 50th year as the owner and operator of one of the most historic motels along 66. Please welcome to the podcast, Ramona Lehman, owner of the Munger Moss Motel in Missouri. Ramona, how are you doing today?
Well, I just got back from shopping, so I spent some money, so I feel good.
Wait, you went shopping. Well, if you've had the Munger Moss for 50 years, you must be up there. And can we ask how old you are?
83.
God bless you. And you went shopping today.
Well, I needed something to eat.
So, Ramona, how does a farm girl from Iowa wind up with one of the most historical motels on Route 66 way back when in 1971?
Well, I don't know. My life has been good. I feel I've been blessed very much. I grew up knowing right from wrong in a Christian family and so forth. Do unto others as you want them to do unto you was when I was a teenager. So I don't know. I met people. I like people. You talk decent to people. Oh, I can get mad too. But my life was not ups and downs. It was, you grew up, you had your chores to do. You learned how to do them. I hated go getting eggs because the old hens would pick at you. But, time just goes on and so forth and so forth. When I was in high school, my daddy would pick me up and take me about 35 miles to a town, and I took lessons in playing a pipe organ. And I really enjoyed that. And then I did it for our church and stuff like that. And I'd like to go and practice at night and make all the windows rattle.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but time goes on. I mean, graduated from high school. Worked for a year in a insurance company and went to college then for a year. And then my best friend married my husband's best friend, so that's how we met.
Oh.
So, yeah, that was very interesting. So, but, and they got married, and we were in their wedding, and a week and a half later, we had a chivalry, and then the next week, I got a diamond from my husband. And so then we married in November of 1957. And so my first touch with Route 66 was we went to St. Louis and we stayed in the King Brothers Motel on Route 66. So I tell everybody I was predestined to be here. So then, went home. He farmed with his father, worked in a feed mill too. I went back to school. We had 4 children, and I went back to school and got my license for an LPN and did that for a while, worked in a doctor's office. And then one day in January of 71, we had a snow blizzard. It was waist deep, no matter where you looked. They brought in big plows to open up the roads. We had our radio antennas as high as they would go with a red handkerchief on it, so you could see when you come to a corner that somebody else was coming. So that was very hairy. But eventually it started to, drip, 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 drip. And so I went back to work, and he was out, and, probably about 50 miles from home selling feed and stuff. And we had a civil defense warning blizzard. And when that thing hit, you could see nothing. So he got through a place where there was big snow and found another guy, and they went into a farmyard. Ended up 30 people in that house that night. And I got home. Took me 30 minutes to drive 12 miles. I crept, but I could just see patches of highway.
Wow.
And my kiddies all knew, the buses delivered the kids to grandpa and grandma. So anyhow, he got a call through me, told me it was okay. Next afternoon, he got back home. First words out of his mouth, "We're moving."
Oh.
We're moving south. Yeah, we laughed.
Wow.
But anyhow, come the spring then, he started looking at crap. I mean, it was a motel. We had talked about doing that once, or otherwise going out to Colorado and getting a big old cattle ranch, or, how you dream.
Yeah.
And so he met a guy who knew somebody in Springfield, Missouri, who had a bunch of motels that were for sale. And this guy liked to trade. Well, we had our farm and, his folks' farm. So anyhow, it was towards the end of April, we all hopped in a car and took a journey down to Springfield. Stayed in Mount Vernon Motel, I think, or Vernon Motel, something like that. Anyhow, the guys went looking and stuff. We looked a little bit. Anyhow, Bob's opinion was the character was a shyster.
Mm.
He was not an honest man or something like that is what he felt. So he didn't want to do business with him. So the next morning we headed for home. Got here to Lebanon. Our gas was low, so pulled into a gas station and gassed up, and lo and behold, there was another licensed realtor gassing up. The guys got to talking, and lo and behold, all of a sudden, I'm over on the other side of town, and we meet Pete and Jesse Hudson, who own the Munger Moss Motel. Pete was a Mason, Bob was a Mason, so they're brothers. They don't lie. And he took us around and showed us and talked prices and stuff. And we went home, talked about it. We didn't have money, so we mortgaged our farm to an insurance company and got enough for a down payment. And by cracky, by the 1st of June, we were here.
Wow, what a great story, especially to hear it from you, right from your mouth. Wow.
So, I mean, Pete and Jesse were beautiful people who, helped us. And Pete would always come out and say, "Where's my Bob?" So, and Jesse stayed in here. And, and most of the first days, I spent a lot of time out in the rooms, seeing what the rooms was, learning all that from, I think at that time there was 6 maids here or something like that. So.
Wow. So what is the early history of the Munger Moss, Ramona?
Okay. The name came from Mr. and Mrs. Munger, H.P. Munger. They had a fishing resort down on the Big Piney River, which goes through Devil's Elbow. It's a little bit north of there. He died. Then she went down to the Devil's Elbow and opened up a sandwich shop. It was barbecue. And she met and married Emmett Moss. That's how you come up with the name Munger Moss.
Oh.
And, Pete and Jesse Hudson, who built this, they were from St. Louis. I don't know what brought him down to there, or anything like that. They never said. But she talked about the place, so I presume they were there a while. But then she said she didn't say. I heard later from a relative that he bought the name and the recipe, and then he moved it. Then he bought this piece of land where it is now, and that was it. So I did meet Nettie Munger Moss the first summer. She came back to see Jesse, and Jesse brought her out to meet me. And I mean, when she stepped out the pickup, she had a gun on her hip.
What'd you think?
I thought, wow, what a lady. No, I mean, she was very nice and so forth like that. I never did see her again.
Oh.
But that's how the story started anyhow. And so that's where the name Munger Moss comes from. It's not a special moss or anything like that. Her names of... It is from some names, but, not that have...
Right.
That they ever had anything to do with the motel or anything like that. But
now, you were married to Bob for 62 years, and I had the pleasure of meeting the both of you right before he passed. Tell my listeners one thing you would want them to know about your late husband.
He was a very honest man. He loved his children. Not one night ever went by that he didn't tell his 4 children that he loved them.
Aww.
And he was good to anybody. I mean, he never regretted moving down here. He thought it was the best thing he'd ever done in his life. And
wow.
Of course, his mom and dad moved down too, so we had them here too. But no, he was just a very good, humble man. Loved to work, loved to repair, and everything else. But,
and what has kept you in the business all these years?
Meeting people. I loved it. When I started talking, you meet people from all over the world. You learn stuff. I mean, you really do. Oh, I didn't know there was that kind of a country. Oh, dear. And, talking to, my nationality is German, and talking to German people and telling them what my maiden name was and my mother's maiden name was, and my and learning sometimes what those names meant. It was always, the thing of it is, you just got to be gracious to people. You gotta. Oh, I became a hugger. You remember? I give everybody a hug.
Yes. I remember just standing with you at the counter in the lobby, and we were probably shooting the breeze for well over an hour as people came in to check in and check out, and I remember briefly meeting your husband Bob, but you were like running the show behind the counter, and I guess all of my listeners who are familiar with the Munger Moss, that's like one of the best memories. Now, Ramona, I also interviewed Kevin and Nancy, and they told me the story when they were considering buying the Blue Swallow, that you were very helpful to them, but they couldn't tell you until it was a done deal. Have you helped other business owners along Route 66 get their foot in the door and get their start?
Oh, I do know. I've talked to numerous ones, yes, but and I like Kevin and Nancy. I showed them a lot of my rooms and stuff like that, and wish them all the luck in the world. Or then when you have people here, mention their place down the road or something like that. And the thing of it is, I think we've got another new old place that will be coming up too. Yep, Route 66 is not going to die. We're not going to let it die.
Right.
We're going to keep it going.
So give my listeners an idea. What was the Munger Moss like 50 years ago? As far as the size of it, the number of rooms, if there were garages attached to them?
Our place, I didn't know at first that there was garages until I saw the pictures. And then I had to figure out where the garages had been.
Really?
And then on the bricks, different bricks. There's a real dark red brick, and every one of those where you see that was a garage at one time. So, but, they turned it in. Okay. Pete built and opened up in 1946. He had 7 buildings, 14 rooms, and 14 garages. And then in 1957, the byway went by us, or the new, what they called, double-laned,
highway, right.
That opened up. Mm-hmm. And Pete said when they opened that up, the road going by here was not even fastened onto the other road. So he said he went down and put planks in the ditch.
Wow.
And a sign that said Munger Moss. And he said, by dang, they came around the corner. And he said, I knew then I wasn't going to die.
Wow.
So, and that was in probably 1957, because I've got a picture of the highway then. And then he went and he closed up the garages.
Oh.
There were spaces between the buildings too, and they closed up that and made that had one outside door, inside 2 rooms, and a bathroom for the big families.
Mm-hmm.
And we had, 8 of those. And about 1975, 76, it seemed like all of a sudden there wasn't no big families. So my Bob got busy, and we turned them all into efficiencies and put little kitchenettes in them. So when we first came here, there was 73 rooms that we could rent. And believe me, we did rent them, but the traffic was not Route 66 travel. It was just interstate travel.
Right.
And the interstate had their Route 66 signs on it. But, that wasn't what it just wasn't true Route 66. So the county roads could still drive right onto the road. There was lots of accidents. So then in, I think, 1985, 86, somewhere in there,
Yep.
I think then they finally got everything that it was like it was supposed to be, and then they deregulated it and took all the signs down. And then it wasn't long, and here comes people. Where's Route 66? Where's Route 66? How'd it go through your town? I mean, and then there was those that were ambitious enough, like Jim Powell and his brother. They took a truck down that road and then talked about making an association, and that's what every single our state did, and go to your state legislature and then have it all declared a historic highway, and then help them get the signs and stuff up and so forth. Go to your county and your city, and so it was lots of fun just getting all that done up. And then Michael Wallace writes a big book, and we meet him in St. Louis. That was the first meeting I went to of the association. We went to St. Louis, and that's when we met Michael Wallace, and he read to us out of his book.
Yeah, he was one of my first guests. My second guest was Angel. But I've also had Roman Rich on, who's the current president of the Missouri Association.
Yes, we've got Rich, which is a good president.
Oh, my gosh, yeah. Ramona, how many rooms are there today at the Munger Moss?
I've got 44 rooms that I can rent out.
For the Route 66 traveler who's making plans to travel down the road, what room would you recommend that they reserve at the Munger Moss?
Room 24.
Tell us about room 24.
It's a room with a great big king bed in it. I've got laminated flooring down with rugs. It's got about 80 pictures hanging on the wall all the way around. The bathroom is the original. It's got a pink tub. And there's I found a postcard, and I copied it, and I put that in there, and it says, you're going down the road, and the music is playing, and then in the front seat while you're playing in the back seat, right? I tell people to look at that, and then they all laugh.
And then I know you have long-term residents there. What are some of the challenges of operating such an important motel along 66, and then also just to pay the bills to have the long-term residents there too?
So the long-term residents got me through COVID.
Yes.
COVID.
Yes.
They had jobs. Most of them work in a factory or something like this, and they have to be clean. They have to keep it cleaned. And I kick some out every once in a while, or they try to bring in other people.
Yep.
But I try to keep good people. If I know they're on drugs, out they go.
Absolutely. Now, about 10 years ago, I think you had the Munger Moss put on the market for sale. What made you stay, and how much longer do you think you'll be there for?
Well, I don't know. I think it was earlier than that once Bob put it out, and the guy brought a guy to look at it, and after he left, Bob says, "Well, what do we do if we sell it?"
Yeah.
I says, "Well, by damn, I don't think you're ready to sell it." I said, "You tell that guy you don't want to sell it." So, I don't know. It just wasn't really in us to sell it, I guess.
Do any of your children have any interest in carrying on the family tradition?
My oldest daughter runs a motel in Osage Beach. And then my other daughter, she helps me here. So, and my grandchildren don't want it. They've all got good jobs. So, I will find somebody who loves this place as much as I do and will keep it like it is. That's my big...
And that's a prerequisite.
Mm-hmm. Because it is what it was.
Absolutely. Thank you for doing that.
To be kept as it is. And, but I think there's too many people that love this place that it won't stay going good.
Right.
So.
And how does that make you feel, knowing the tradition will be carried on long after you're gone?
Well, it'll make a lot of people happy because the people we've got our own little society here, and that's a couple of them. That's their fear that something will happen to this place, because this is about the only good iconic thing we've got in this town. So, and then we're still working on our bridge 14 miles east of here. We'd like to keep that one, too.
Now, tell us about the iconic sign out front.
Well, that was put up in 55, they told me. So it was way down on the ground for those years. And then when the bypass went up, then he lifted it that way up. In 2010, I got a grant, and we completely redid the sign inside and what was broken on the outside. That was $23,000 worth. So now it's working real good now. It's pretty as it ever was. I've got LED bulbs on the front and back. There's 720 of them. They've been there now for 4 years. They haven't. There's a couple I see that are out, but when I wrote out the check for those damn bulbs, I wrote a check out for $1,235.
Oh, boy.
And I thought, wow. But when I had my party here in June,
yes,
I had it. I stuck another couple of $1,000 into it just to get transformers go out, our neon pieces get broke.
So in June, there was a huge celebration at the Munger Moss, celebrating the 50 years that you've been the owner and operator, along with your late husband, Bob. What was that like back in June?
That was the most fun I ever had.
Tell us.
No, it was full of all my Route 66 buddies and pals and stuff like that. They were all here helping. We had a hog roast, and it was just a fun time, and a bunch of them stayed over on the Sunday and even helped strip the rooms and make beds. So, but no, the town thought it was a pretty good too, because they had some stuff going on too that weekend. So,
who were some of the more memorable visitors you've had to the Munger Moss through the years?
The ones I remember is a guy from Brazil. I don't know his name. Walked in the door, looked at me, and said, "You're Ramona." And I said, "Yeah." I walked over and touched me and says, "But damn, you're real."
Aw.
Another one is when Munger Moss was 50. That'd be 25 years ago. Anyhow, we had a meeting here in town, and I called everybody out, or asked everybody to come out for cake and coffee. And this little man walks in and says, "You're Ramona?" I said, "Yeah." And he says, "Well, I got something to say to you." And I thought, oh my gosh, what I do now? Anyhow, he says, "All I can say is you've done the names Munger and Moss proud. And I am so proud to know you. You didn't take the name and throw it away. You kept it, and you made something better out of it. He said, I am so happy to have known you.
Aw.
That was Emmett Moss.
Oh, wow. How cool is that?
I was in tears.
Oh, yeah, just hearing it. Wow. And your sign is operational even today, correct?
Yep.
And I can't imagine how many times a day people stop by to take pictures.
A lot of them just drive up, roll down the window. Some come in, look around. Just traveling 66. I says, fine, So, like I said, it's not going to go away. It's going to stay.
Anybody listening to the show, if they stop by to take a picture of Ramona's signage out front, whether it be daytime or nighttime, do you have items in the gift shop there that you sell to travelers?
Yep.
And what's the most popular item that sells, Ramona?
Shoot, I don't know. Magnets, really.
Okay.
They sell real good. I mean, because I've got one of the motel too. I've got lots of them. I've got pins that you can pin on yourself. I've got stickers. So, and I've got toys. I have started selling some of Bob's toys too.
His actual toys?
Yeah, trucks and tractors.
Wow. So those must be collectibles.
Well, yeah. A lot of them are in the box, brand new. No, he used to go to toy shows. Mm-hmm. You couldn't stop him. We went every fall up to Dyersville, Iowa, where the Ertl Toy Company was. So, and they always had a special tractor every year. So,
Ramona, what's been the biggest challenge in the past 50 years of running the Munger Moss Motel?
I don't know. I think the early years. And I know we had to borrow money to keep going. I was very careful to make every single payment on time and so forth. So, and I was happy the day I could burn the deed.
And that must have been a while ago, right?
Oh, it was just me and Bob.
Now, I read somewhere in my research, I don't know if this is true. Is it true that the Munger Moss in the day had the first in-ground pool in Lebanon, Missouri?
That is what I heard. That is what I was told. And I'm thinking it was somewhere around 49.
Yeah, I have early 50s. And I heard a story, maybe Ramona, if you remember the story. What did they use to dig up the hole to cover from the blast?
Oh, they used blankets and stuff like that.
Yeah, I read that somewhere. They used mattresses after throwing the TNT.
Well, that's what Pete told me.
Wow. Interesting.
That's how he dug his pool, because you go down a foot. It's like lime rock. And when they put a line through here, I don't know if it was a water line, because I've got my own wells, so I'm not on city water, but they did put water lines down through here. In doing that, they blew out my windows.
Oh my gosh.
Yep, they dynamited it.
Ramona, when's the last time you took a vacation?
Probably January.
So recently, okay. And did you do something special? What did you do?
I went to Shelley and Jim Ross You know them too, don't you?
Yeah, actually, Shelley Graham was on my show. She wrote a book about the Coral Court Motel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, she calls me Auntie Ramona.
Oh.
We're both from Iowa.
Okay. Yeah. And obviously,
No.
Roman Rich is the current president of the association in Missouri, where you're at,
Yep.
and he's been such a great supporter of the show. He was on, and this past summer I was actually at the Painted Desert Trading Post, which he's done a remarkable job.
Oh, they have. I see that's something.
Absolutely.
That's what the Route 66 thing people are all about.
Yes.
We preserve.
Yes.
We keep. We don't destroy. We don't throw away. Like, everything's made to throw away.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
No, I'm real proud of what they're doing out there. I mean, that's just like we had one little cabin here in Lebanon that was part of the Joy Motel.
Right.
That they had never tore down. And I was in the, gal was cutting my hair and was right across the road from it, and she said, well, they're going to tear it down. I said, like hell they are. So I got on the phone and got a hold of a couple of the boys in the our association. I said, hey, we got to save that. And then they went to that guy, and he says, well, just take it. So that's in our Route 66 park now, too. So they moved it, and it's got a bed in it and a little chamber pot and a little stove, and sits out there, too. So
now, the Route 66 community knows Ramona Lehman, but do the locals in Lebanon, Missouri, know much about you?
They're getting to know a lot about me. I mean, really. I joined Rotary Club, too, so after Bob passed away. The thing of it was, all I met was people, mostly, that were traveling, I didn't know the people in town.
Right.
Much.
Yep.
But, So I did this now for a couple of years, and I'm glad I did.
Good for you.
We do good too things, and
do you have any great grandchildren, Ramona?
6 of them.
6 great grandkids, because you said your grandchildren were working and are adults. Wow.
No, these are my 6 great grandchildren.
Wow. Wow. And how old are they, or how young are they?
They start at 12. And the youngest one is 2.5.
Aw.
And he's little Robert Joseph.
And what's it like when they come to visit great grandma at the Munger Moss? That must be a trip.
Well, they got a toy box, and all the toys get put on the floor, and they play with it. And then little Robert comes out, and he sees trucks on the and he says, "Car!" He gets another one.
All right, Ramona, one more sales pitch. If anybody out there is a die-hard Route 66 person who's looking to take over an incredible business, give them your sales pitch one more time. Who should they call?
They should call me at 417-532-3111. And I would be glad to talk to them. I have a lot of things I want that have to be done to be able to buy it. But if you're really interested and have a love of Route 66, you've got to have a love of Route 66. Way down in your feet.
Yeah. So, Ramona, what really is next on your bucket list, ma'am?
I don't know. I haven't thought that far ahead. I don't know what to do. I've got several. I want to take a trip to Alaska sometime.
Oh, you've never been?
Never been. I haven't been out of the United States.
And all these people you've met.
I haven't even been to all the states in the United States.
Wow. Have you been to the West Coast or East Coast?
Never. Well, I got the farthest I got east was Smoky Mountains.
Okay.
And I've been down to the Gulf, and I've been out to California.
And have you traveled the entire length of 66?
Nope, I got as far as Springfield, Illinois. I did not want to go to Chicago. And I got as far as Amboy, California. And that was out in the desert, and Bob looks at me. Went out west probably numerous times, in the winter. And he looks at me and he says, "Have you had enough of this goddamn desert yet?" I says, "You don't want to go any further? We'll just turn around and go home." So we did.
What year was that, Ramona?
Oh, crap. He died in probably 5 years, 6 years before that.
So you've never been to the beginning sign in Chicago or the Santa Monica Pier?
Mm-mm.
So maybe we should start some type of a GoFundMe program to send Ramona all the way to the pier on California. Wow, that's incredible.
Oh, shoot. No, it's safer in the middle of the United States.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I'm so glad we could talk with you today. This is really a special treat. I know my listeners will enjoy it for years to come, just to capture this oral history with you, just like the likes of Michael Wallace, Angel Delgadillo, and there are people I've had on the show who unfortunately have passed. So I'm just so touched that you took the time today to talk with me, Ramona.
Long live Route 66. I'm 83. Everybody in my family died before that age. So I think God's still got something for me to do. I don't know what it is, but I'll be here as long as I can. I want to see my little ones all grow up. And to my friends, God bless you all. And we have one heck of a Route 66 family.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Happy Route 66. And
that's Ramona Lehman. Ramona, thank you, thank you, thank you. It just warms my heart knowing that I was able to capture the oral history of the Munger Moss told in first person by Ramona herself. I just can't believe that Ramona has never traveled the entire road in her 50 years as a Route 66 business owner. I mean, when you think about it, she's less than 6 hours from Chicago, and she's never been there. But you know what? I'm sure she has an image of what the beginning and the end of Route 66 is like in her head. And how many times we visit a Route 66 site, and it's just different from what we expected. Or maybe it was featured right here on one of the episodes, and when you drive by it today, it's all gone. Or maybe just a field or a new housing development. I'll never forget a few years ago, I was in Marlborough where the Coral Court once stood, and I met a young couple with a baby who lived in that development. They were pushing the baby stroller, and they never knew anything about the Coral Court. And they thought that the wall that stands on the property was a bit out of place with regard to its design. And as a reminder, if you're a Patreon member, I have an additional 10 minutes of footage where Ramona talks about her life at the Munger Moss Motel over the past 50 years. And now the trivia question for today's show. On the last episode, I featured the GAR Cemetery in Miami, Oklahoma, and the 15 British soldiers who were laid to rest there as a result of training accidents during the early days of World War II. Here's the question. John Riesbeck never met his father, Ken, who was killed here back in 1944, while his wife back home was pregnant with John. Recently, at the age of 75, what historic event did John take during a visit to Miami, Oklahoma, to celebrate his father's life? Well, they arranged to have John fly the final flight that his father flew in a vintage airplane. Boy, if that's not closure for a 75-year-old guy, I don't know what is. You could hear not only that story, but incredible stories about the people laid to rest at the GAR Cemetery in Miami, Oklahoma, from a world-renowned artist to a champion bronco rider. Next time on the podcast, have I got a bridge for you? Yep, the London Bridge. And while it may not be exactly on Route 66, the original London Bridge is only 30 miles from Route 66, and we'll hear the whole story about how the London Bridge was dismantled and relocated to a desert town some 50 years ago. Here's a clip featuring that upcoming show.
Say that my grandfather was an entrepreneur. He was very gifted intellectually. He was very smart, went to Princeton, and then he went to Stanford, and he majored in engineering. Sold his first company, for like $1 million when he was about 30 years old. So, but then he went into land development, and then obviously saw the opportunity for the London Bridge, which it was advertised as being for sale. But I think that most people probably looked at that and thought that would be a joke. But when he bought it in 1968, I was 9 years old and had heard about it when I was in school. I actually got called out of class and sent to the headmaster's office, and it had been fairly large, in the news at the time. So I was told by my headmaster that my grandfather bought the London Bridge, which I was a little confused about that, but just basically said, "Are you talking about the one that's in the song?" And they said, "Yeah, the one in the song." He thought it would be a good idea. It was later on when I was an adult and I went back and I read some of the articles about it. They weren't. Most of them were not very favorable. They were sort of, they described him as crazy or, office rocker, kind of a pipe dream, all that kind of stuff. But once it was built, then the tone changed a little bit. And then now 50 years later, the tone has completely changed. Now it's, he was a visionary and it.
So if that bridge could talk, what would it tell us about the history?
There are lights on it. These street lights are made of iron, and they are made of the cannons that Napoleon used in the Battle of Waterloo.
You can actually see bullet holes in the bridge?
Yes. In the beginning of World War II, Hitler wanted to invade England and Great Britain. So they bombed London. There was a Messerschmitt and a Spitfire fighting over London. The Messerschmitt crashed on the London Bridge, and the Spitfire was behind him, shooting at him. Eisenhower crossed it, and Queen Elizabeth and the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, they put up the bridge for sale. And there were a lot of people who would love to have it. It was an auction, and McCulloch won the auction for $2.4 million. Who can do things like that? Of course, he had money, but he bought 26 square miles of land, and he asked people to come over. But in those days, there was only Route 66. I think he had a vision. I think he was admired. Yes, he was admired here, and still. Because he had to take the whole bridge apart. Then they brought these in boats over from England through the Panama Canal, Long Beach, and then by truck to Lake Havasu. So when you look at the bridge, it is exactly what you saw in London.
So McCulloch buys the bridge. He has it reassembled in Lake Havasu exactly 50 years ago. What was the opening day like?
Well, I think there were about 30,000 people.
Wow.
They came from everywhere. It was a big parade. The Lord Mayor of London was here. And there were a lot of people, movie stars over here. We get a lot of visitors who have done Route 66, and they come over here to go on Route 66, and especially the part between Needles and Kingman is beautiful. I think it's the best kept part of Route 66.
That's the entire story of the London Bridge, which, by the way, is the second most popular destination in Arizona, just second to people visiting the Grand Canyon. Thank you for taking the journey with us here at the Route 66 Podcast. Please be sure to visit Route66podcast.com for detailed show notes and to see pictures of the Munger Moss, both past and present. And don't forget about the scholarship program. The deadline is December 15th. I'd like to see every student in grades K through college apply, especially for the college crowd. That's a $1,000 award for the current school year. I'm your host, Anthony Arno.